right. Thank you for joining us on the Nikki Maduro Show. It is July 1st, and we had a very important Supreme Court ruling, and we will be discussing it in just a few moments with legal analyst Royal Oakes. You know him from ABC. We talked to him many times on KGO Radio. Kim is going to be joining us. She has a little bit of a computer issue, but we will be joining. Royal Oakes will be joining us in just a moment. But first, you guys, please click that thumbs up button and that subscribe button so you don't miss a moment. And we will be getting to your comments and your reaction to the Supreme Court ruling regarding former President Trump, convicted felon Donald Trump's immunity case. He is on a train, so we're going to keep that in mind. But let us welcome our good friend, legal analyst Royal Oakes to the show. Royal, thank you so much for taking the time and coming on the Nikki Maduro Show.
My pleasure, and Amtrak fans, of course, will sympathize with my situation rolling along. May have a public address announcement in the background, but nice to see you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so the Supreme Court came down with the rulings around 7:30 our time this morning, and it was in the immunity case with the events that Donald Trump, the events that led up to January 6th. Now, kind of explain what the Supreme Court ruling was in regards to whether he has total immunity as president of the United States.
Right. In a nutshell, the court said he does not have total immunity. However, he does have total immunity if he's doing core job duties like appointing an ambassador or something like that. But if he's just doing stuff that's totally personal, he doesn't. And the court sent the case back to the trial court to figure out, his different acts. Which bucket do his acts go into? The Official Duties Act as opposed to the personal stuff. If we put this question of whether a former president may be criminally prosecuted in context, it's really weird, Nikki, that when you think of it, until today, after 250 years, we didn't know from the U.S. Supreme Court whether a former president could be tossed in jail for doing something he did while president. So now we know, but the answer isn't simple. The court essentially said that if a prosecutor tries to put an ex-president in jail on trial for doing official job duties, that will not fly. On the other hand, if what he did was personal in nature, not really part of his job as president, then he may be prosecuted. But applying this principle to Trump's situation, prosecutor Jack Smith charged Trump with a lot of misconduct related, as you know, to Trump's reaction to the 2020 election, trying to get Vice President Mike Pence to stop the counting of electoral votes, for example, because Trump thought there was election fraud, even though 60 courts ruled against him. So Trump comes along in that case and he says, okay, Judge Tanya Chutkan, you really got to dismiss the charges against me because, I'm a president. You can't do that. She said, nice try. There is no immunity. But he went up to the U.S. Supreme Court and the court agreed with him. They said, well, she was wrong. There is immunity under some circumstances, but she didn't analyze which bucket your conduct went into. So it's sending it back to her. And as a practical matter, as we know, the big question is there going to be a second jury verdict against Donald Trump before the November election? We now know, based on this decision, forget about it. There will be no second verdict against Trump, at least in the D.C. election interference case, because the judge there has her work cut out for her to analyze all of the actions, sort the acts into the two buckets. So if you were rooting for a D.C. election interference verdict against Trump that might impact the November election, it ain't going to happen.
This is the question that keeps popping into my mind. It all had to do with the election, Royal. Can a president, whether he's in office or not, if he's running for a campaign is personal. It should always be in that personal bucket. It is not an official presidential duty. You're running for in my opinion, of course, it's a personal decision to run for re-election. It's not part of your job, your presidential job, to run for re-election. So isn't that in and of itself in that bucket?
It sounds like it, and you make a persuasive case. The other side of that coin, as expressed by Donald Trump's lawyers, will be, well, Nikki, yeah, you're a smart person and you sound like you have a smart argument, but Donald Trump said, my job as commander-in-chief and president of the United States is to enforce all federal laws. That's in the Constitution. That's part of his job description. And federal laws include election laws. And if there was rampant election fraud, then doggone it, I was justified in trying to stop that fraud. And I said to Mike Pence, pal, to be courageous, you've really got to stop the counting of the electoral votes here. You're running the Senate. You preside over the counting. And it's all about election law. It's all about stopping fraud. Now, we all know that, there's a strong case for that being a crock, technically and legally speaking, because Trump lost 60 straight cases in the courts.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but the bottom line is there are two sides to the coin. And the other bottom line is, as I mentioned a minute ago, the practical effect of this is we're debating over whether something will happen in 2025, 2026. But, the real key is, will the voters get another, arguably more important and more substantive conviction than the Stormy Daniels case that might have a bigger impact? I mean, we saw, a lot of us thought, oh my gosh, the independents in this nation, when they hear he's a convicted felon that may go to prison, that's going to really be a game changer. It's going to be, instead of Trump 48, Biden 44, it's going to be Biden 50 and Trump 35. Doesn't look like it was going to be that way. Even before the debate Thursday, it didn't seem to move the needle too much. I don't know why I said noodle. So we're not going to have that more substantive conviction before November as a result of today's decision.
I wonder if, and hi, Royal Oaks, I wonder if this is just going to be the new normal. Oh, do you hear me? Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
If this is going to be the way our new normal, how we're going to figure out what's personal, what's done under presidential office details, and is everything going to have to go to court? Is a judge going to have to decide on every case from now into the future as to what the president, whether it qualifies for immunity or not?
Oh, absolutely. This 6-3 decision, of course, predictably, the liberals were not happy. And interestingly, the tradition is when you dissent, you say, ba, 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 I respectfully dissent. That's what they always say. Guess what Justice Sotomayor said? She didn't write that. She said, I dissent for fear of democracy in our nation. So really angry. So, but getting back to your new normal thing, it is the new normal. And, people are, it's hopefully not going to be a whole lot of cases where a president of the United States, a former president, is possibly going to be put on trial. Let me give you an example of what some of the conservatives are saying, though. They're saying, well, this makes sense. For example, let's say you got some wacko right-wing district attorney in Yuma, Arizona, where people are coming across the border. And it would be very easy for a prosecutor there, a big, John Bircher MAGA person, to say, guess what, Joe Biden, interesting term of office you had. Boy, you gave us some real fun times. You allowed thousands of people, millions of people to pour across the border illegally. You allowed them to commit horrible crimes against Americans. We're putting you on trial, Joe Biden. Well, the response to that by Joe Biden's lawyers would be, nice try. Read Chief Justice John Roberts' decision from July 1, 2024, which said you can't prosecute Joe for doing his official duties. And it was definitely his official duty to establish an immigration policy. So the conservative argument will be, this ain't so bad. It's what's good for the goose is good for the gander.
Right. I just wonder, you said obviously we're not going to see any sort of case from Jack Smith before the election, and it's going to be handed back to the lower courts. The lower courts, Royal, did rule, obviously, that Donald Trump does not have total immunity.
Right.
Is there any way of speeding this up? I mean, is there any, I know I'm kind of probably dreaming here, but is it just, that's it? We're not going to see, there's zero chance that we're going to see something before the November election?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there isn't a zero chance. As I mentioned a minute ago, I think this is going to push it out a year or two. But here's a scenario where it might happen. Judge Tanya Chutkan might take this decision and next week say, okay, I didn't want to act too quickly. I wanted you to all enjoy your 4th of July holiday. But I'd like to expedite this. And I hear what the Supreme Court said. Here's my determination. We're going to have a hearing on July 20 or 22, and we're going to sort out what the stuff belongs in what bucket. And I'm pretty fast, I'm going to clear my docket. I think I can determine which allegations are purely personal, and we're just going to get rid of the stuff that is official or maybe official. And hey, Mr. Trump, Labor Day is a nice holiday, but what about the Tuesday after Labor Day? Could you show up for a trial then? That's theoretically possible. Now, here's a problem for Trump if she does that. If she does that, and it seems like she really expedited it in an unfair overly quick way, he might try to go back up to the U.S. Supreme Court. But pre-verdict rulings by a trial court are rarely allowed to go up on appeal before the actual verdict. Why? Because a guy might be found not guilty. And if a guy who's accused of a crime gets to go up to the appeals court or the Supreme Court up and down 5 times before he's even convicted, and then he's found not guilty, then the Supreme Court says, wow, that was great. We just wasted 6 months of our life we'll never get back, ruling on these little picky points raised by the criminal defendant. And then he was found not guilty. And so the general rule is you may not appeal until you've first been convicted. But there are exceptions to that. And one of the exceptions allowed Trump to go up for this decision. It is not a definite done deal that he would be allowed to go back up to the Supreme Court if Tanya Chutkan does what I described, namely, let's get it on, let's expedite and have a verdict before election. So bottom line is, I think it's unlikely she could do that, or that she would even try to do it. It would look a little bit like she, had it in for the guy, but it's possible. So, you can hold out some hope.
Can you ease fears a little bit? I'm reading some of the comments. Justice Sonia Sotomayor wrote the scathing dissent that was being read, kind of that this is such a threat to our democracy. Is it? Because I try to be rational, Royal. I really do. I mean, there is, just like you described with the border kind of scenario. I mean, there are things that presidents have to do in an official capacity. There are things that are obviously blatantly personal duties. And I mean, how much of a threat to democracy is this kind of non-ruling ruling from the Supreme Court moving forward? I do feel that there is some common sense things that we can, and there is still some checks and balances there. Or should I be afraid?
Well, no, it does seem like it makes sense to draw a line between personal and official acts. Justice Roberts responded to the dissent. It sounds funny because the dissent responds to the majority, but the way the Supreme Court works, they all swap their majority and dissent opinions, so they all get to poke at the other side. Justice Roberts responded to Justice Sotomayor by saying that the dissent strikes a tone of chilling doom that is wholly disproportionate to what the court actually does today. We just conclude that immunity extends to official discussions between the president and his attorney general, and then we remand to the lower courts to determine in the first instance whether his remaining conduct is entitled to immunity. So, you can argue that this isn't, the end of Western civilization. Instead, it's just sort of a parsing of actions. And, it does make sense that a president should not have sort of a chilling effect. You don't really want a president looking over his shoulder saying, am I going to get tossed in prison by some wacko district attorney from the boonies for taking this particular action? On the other hand, you also don't want a creepy criminally oriented president to feel like, yippee, I've got a get out of jail free card. So there are definitely two sides to the coin. But, in the Trump era, where he is seen as such a polarizing extreme figure, it's hard for people on either side of the spectrum to acknowledge that, this is, there's an argument with two sides, because people either, think he's Lucifer or they don't.
Right, exactly.
I think bottom line, you could consider it a win for Trump, because now we stretch this out even longer. We go back down to the lower courts. And so it's kind of the thing that we always knew he was trying to get, which is delay. And here we go again.
Yeah, it's interesting that there are two components. There's the practical component involving impact on the political situation, delay being a huge aspect of that. And then there's the purely legal component where, and as I said at the top of the show, it's kind of weird. 250 years, we still didn't know the answer. Now, think of Nixon. I think we all assumed, and certainly Gerald Ford assumed, that a former president could be criminally prosecuted. That's why Gerald Ford kind of shot himself in the foot by pardoning Richard Nixon, because he didn't want prosecutors to be dragging Richard Nixon through the criminal justice system mud. So we assumed that he could be criminally prosecuted, but we didn't really know. I mean, now, of course, we have this issue about personal versus private. I guess you could say it's the same deal with the Richard Nixon situation in terms of him obstructing justice and trying to cover up the Watergate deal. But yeah, it's so political and it's so legal. So it's something that three of us are going to be talking about for a long time.
Yeah. If he doesn't win re-election, is he in deep trouble, though, with this case?
Well, if he doesn't win re-election, as your question sort of implies, he won't be in a position, of course, to tell his new Department of Justice, hey, you know those 2 criminal cases against me? Why don't you dismiss them? He also won't be in a position to pardon himself. We don't know that he could pardon himself. This is another point that after 250 years, the U.S. Supreme Court has not addressed. Some people say, that's a lot like being the judge in your own case, and that just seems wrong. On the other hand, the fact that the pardon power in the U.S. Constitution has several limitations. It does not limit self-pardon. Some people say most people I think guess he probably could pardon himself. So yeah, it's a big deal if he doesn't get reelected because, likely these things will go forward. But even if he's out of office, I mean, these principles announced by this U.S. Supreme Court, which will probably be basically the same court for several years, even if a Democrat president gets a chance to replace 1 or 2 people, he's going to be helped a lot. Another inside baseball deal is the most serious charge by Jack Smith against Donald Trump in the Washington, D.C. case is obstruction of official proceedings. That carries the most number of years behind bars. Last week, one of the U.S. Supreme Court decisions by this court said, hey, the obstruction of official proceeding counts against hundreds of January 6 rioters, that probably has to be tossed because obstruction, inside baseball again, means shredding documents, destroying material things. Well, Jack Smith didn't contemplate that because Donald Trump, for all of the stuff he may have done, it doesn't look like he shredded any documents. So the obstruction count will probably be tossed out, stripped out of the D.C. case. Now, and the other issue is, well, what about the impact on the various other cases? When it comes to the Mar-a-Lago documents, he may have done something while president in terms of declassifying documents, or maybe while president he shipped some stuff to Mar-a-Lago. But probably this decision won't help him on that because it's fundamentally him not handing over documents, handing back when the National Archives says, hey, respectfully, Mr. President, please give the stuff back. So this probably won't help him there. This may well help him in the Georgia case because while he was president, he made the perfect phone call saying, if you could just find out, 11,780 votes, that'd be great. That kind of thing, it might be subject to this. So there may have to be another bucket project in terms of, well, was the perfect call part of his official duties, enforcing the federal election laws, or was it in fact
that's personal to
personal?
Me? You just I say I vote personal with that phone call. I vote totally personal with that phone call.
Who decides?
I decide, Kim.
So now do we have to have a narrowly written law where, Congress goes back and decides, okay, exactly what's personal, exactly what's presidential? Because the argument could be made in any case where a sitting president does something that it's always going to be somehow related to the office. I love this comment by Egolf, who says when a president does it, it's not illegal, which is Richard Nixon, right? I mean, so who decides? Who's the arbiter of what's presidential in duty and what isn't?
No, you're right. And that's, dipping into political history. I think that was the line Richard Nixon used in the famous David Frost interviews,
right,
for which Richard Nixon was handsomely paid. But yeah, I think that's the new normal, as you referred to it, Kim. I mean, every time you're going against a former president, there's going to have to be this parsing process. And in the answer to the question, who does it? Kim, you and Nikki will do it, assuming President Biden appoints you to the federal bench. But if you're not there, other federal judges will make those calls.
And that's why the judicial appointments are so important. And that is why people keep coming back to, this is where the Republicans have had their focus for decades, is these judicial appointments. And I think many people are saying this is where the Democrats have kind of dropped the ball. And, and we're afraid of what's going to happen now that so many cases end up before the U.S. Supreme Court. And with this conservative supermajority, who knows what's next? But leaving it up to them.
Perhaps President Kamala Harris will have a chance to replace some Supreme Court judge. Oh, did I make an assumption about future events? My crystal ball is a little foggy here. I don't know.
Yeah, who knows? Well, Royal Oaks, we really appreciate your analysis. Thank you so much for being on the train and being with us. Royal Oaks legal analyst, you know him from KGO, ABC. Thank you so much. We'd love to have you back anytime. Thank you so much for making
You are quite welcome. You guys are great.
Thank you. All right. Bye-bye. Oh, he's awesome.
I miss that guy. I'm so glad to see him again. Yeah. I mean, it's funny because no matter what anytime I was at KGO and there was a case that, there was a story, there was a case, there was something where Royal Oaks needed to comment, always answered the phone, always available, always ready. And so I love that he came on with us today. It's so awesome.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for, hooking that up. So what do you guys think? I mean, again, you heard it in one of my last questions there, kind of tempering our quote anger, fear, whatever. The decision, while I would have loved for them to say, no, he has, no immunity from anything. A president does need to have some immunity from official duties, obviously, just like Royal Oaks was saying. I wish, though, they would have made a more specific determination on the case that Jack Smith is working on. You know what I mean? And because they sent it back, they kicked the can down the road, which if you were going to friggin' do that, could you have made this decision a little bit friggin' earlier? Which they didn't, which is what pisses people off. Kim, it's like, they know what they're doing. And that's what pisses me off. It's just, it's very calculated, and it makes it seem like everything seems to be working for Donald Trump. And at a time following last week's debate where there's so many questions now of what's next, this is the last thing we freaking need. We need a win, Kim. That's what we need.
In my mind, I'm going through all of the things that Trump has been accused of, and I'm trying to think, could you make the argument that that was done in the line of presidential duties?
Right.
Could you make this? I mean, you can, but could you make a valid argument that, keeping documents was somehow a presidential decision? Could you make the argument that somehow not, inspiring people to an insurrection at the Capitol was somehow presidential in nature? I mean, it's just so uncertain. That's the thing. It's so uncertain.
I feel like it's not. Obviously I'm not the judge, and that's why I was like, I decide. But to me, it doesn't seem. I feel, and maybe there needs to be something kind of written in stone or clarified.
Right.
But I do believe, and Royal was making the point of, part of presidential duties is kind of holding up elections, that sort of thing. But if that same president is in himself and herself running in that election, then they cannot be the decision maker, right? It's kind of, dipping your pen in the same ink type of thing. Yeah. So he cannot be upset about losing the election and using that as an excuse to find and make that perfect phone call to find the votes that he needs to be the winner, especially after court has found that he lost, that there was no fraud. If there is evidence, and the evidence is court cases not finding in your favor that there was no election fraud, then he should accept those results and move on. But because he didn't, I say there's a case that he was making it personal, not presidential, and then should go back.
But see, now you have to make the case. And my problem is it took what should have been common sense and now slaps a big question mark on it, right? A question that now has to be answered by the courts with extra legal arguments and extra time and extra cases. And so it should be like obvious. I need 11,780 votes. That should have been like, they should have knocked on his door 10 minutes later and said, you're under arrest.
Yeah.
Right? But now, I mean,
he used the word I need to find. All I need. What do you mean you need? You know what I mean? You don't need shit. Sorry. You shouldn't need anything. Like the voters decided. That's all. And everybody knows it. This is the thing that I hate the most about the Donald Trump presidency is the gaslighting. It's like we know what we know, and he makes people question it because they've drank the Kool-Aid. And then they yell and scream at us like we're the crazy ones, that we have Trump derangement syndrome. No, MFers, you're dumb. Like you just don't get it. And it bothers me to no end.
Brian says, no, papers regarding the secrets of our government are the possession of the country and not belonging to the president.
Great point.
But if he takes them in concert with some duty that he finds presidential in nature, do you see what I mean? Yeah. Yes, you're obviously, Brian, it's what I say is common sense, which is exactly what you just said, something common sense. And now it's got a big question mark on it. Everything does. Well, I was thinking back to President Clinton and the whole Monica Lewinsky thing. You could say, okay, well, that's obviously personal, right?
Yeah, I don't think that
That's
duty
not a question mark.
was presidential at all.
But other than like some type of romantic rendezvous relationship cheating scandal, anything that has kind of fingerprints on the presidency, like is even in any way related, is now in question. I mean, what you could say, I this is just a pie in the sky hypothesis, okay?
Okay.
I shot the vice president. The president could say this. I shot the vice president because I thought they were doing something that went against America. And it's my duty as president to protect and defend America. And I saw the vice president putting America in danger, so I shot the vice president. You could say that.
You could say that.
You could say, you were president, you were defending America. I mean, it just,
right.
And I know that's extreme, but it's like.
No, but you're right. Exactly. They can hide behind this idea now. Well,
Right.
now, but here's the thing, Kim. It's not that they're saying that that all they can do is make the case, not that you have to buy it, and not that it's automatically going to be found that, yes,
Right.
that's okay. All it says is you're free to make your case, not that you're automatically in jail or automatically kicked out of office. That's what they're saying. And so that's kind of the checks and balances on it. Like,
Right.
you are free to make the case. And that's what Trump is going to have to do now, right? He's free to make the case that what he did leading up to the events of January 6th were under this umbrella or in the bucket of official presidential duties. Good friggin' luck. I don't think he will succeed. I don't think he should succeed. But now the court is, well, he's kicking it down to the lower courts, but that's what they're saying. You can make the case that it is official presidential duties.
Right.
What they didn't do was say, no, that is not presidential duties, which kind of sucks. You know what I mean? So if, for instance, under your kind of made up scenario, a president shot the vice president, now that president would not immediately go to jail. They would be able to sleep in the White House and make their case and drag it out, and
Right.
whatever the order is, be able to do that. Yeah,
I know it's a silly analogy, but like my mind goes crazy with all the what ifs.
exactly. Of course, because that's where we are. And the other thing that stinks is because of a Trump president, and I'm going to put this on Donald Trump because I feel like we lost a lot of common sense with his presidency. I think that a lot of the norms, and obviously that's not okay, and those sorts of things. But I just feel like because of his presidency, a lot of things end up before the U.S. Supreme Court, if that makes sense, right? Like, well, no, we just don't do that. All those sorts of things. And now all of a sudden, certain cases, Roe v. Wade, Baker is not baking cakes for same-sex couples. All of these sorts of things just keep going all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court because that's what they wanted. They wanted this to happen. This was all kind of part of the plan so that it would make its way up to a conservative Supreme Court, and then all of these things get turned around.
Vilma writes, self-interest when you are president can be made into the best interest of the country as a presidential act. That's the thing. It's just that now that there's a murky, kind of watery line that didn't used to be there, at least for me. Thanks, Doug, for the $5.
Oh, thank you, Doug, so much. Thank you, Luis, as well. The presidential yard sale he was getting ready to have with those documents with North Korea, Russia, etc., was obviously official duty.
Yeah.
LOL. Yeah, thanks. Exactly, Luis. And thank you again for the $5. I mean,
funny.
it's just ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. But again, I don't think that we need to be running around with our hair on fire, if that makes sense.
Right.
What we do need to be concerned about, and I'm still concerned since last week, is what is Biden going to do? And it's a huge, big, gigantic question mark. Apparently over the weekend, the Biden family has been telling President Biden, stay in the race, stay in the race, stay in the race. And I'll ask you guys in the comments as well, have your feelings, your emotions, your opinions changed now that a couple of days have passed in between the debate and today regarding what you think Biden should do?
This is really difficult.
Yeah.
I don't think we can look at what happened at the debate and think, oh, that's a great president. Now, I like what he's done as president. I'm not saying that. I like the people he surrounds himself with as president. And so all of these things. And I'm still going to vote for him because I'm a never Trumper, right? I mean, I don't care. As you say, it could be a cardboard cutout. and I'm still going to vote for the person over Trump.
That's the way I'm not voting for Trump. So if Biden is the Democratic nominee, I'm voting for Biden. That's my answer.
So Gavin Newsom, after the debate, said you don't turn your back on someone because of one poor performance. The problem with that is looked a lot like more than just a poor performance. It looked like, and I've read things that said, yes, President Biden only has a few good hours where he's with it, and then. I feel like that's not going to help us as a country. We need to find someone who's got enough vigor to do the job. This is a job that takes a lot out of a person.
Yeah.
You can see, I mean, you see someone go into the office, and when they come out, they look all haggard and old and gray, and they've been through
Look at
hell.
Obama. Remember how much gray he had at the end of it?
Mm-hmm. This is a
job.
What
are you going to do?
Take the living daylights out of you, right? I mean, this is a hard thing, and so we have to have someone that has the stamina for it.
What should they do? What do you think they should do?
I think he has to step aside.
For who though? For who? Who should step in?
That's the question, because I don't think that they can just step over Kamala Harris. Otherwise, it looks like we're just circumventing Kamala Harris. Like we just kick the black lady to the curb. I don't think that feels right either. But then again, you have to have someone who can actually win this election because too much is at stake. I don't know what to do. This is who put us in this position. He should never have said he was going to run again. We should have had a primary season where we, were really able to decide between candidates who could do the job. I hate to say any of this. I hate to say it.
But Karen is making a good argument about Ronald Reagan. But Ronald Reagan and having Alzheimer's and whatever happened at a time before social media. Before Well, people around him knew. Nancy Reagan knew. Everyone knew.
Well-kept secret, and we didn't really know until after he left office.
Exactly.
We didn't know.
We didn't know because the people around him kept it secret. Now, was that right? No, of course not. But now in this age of social media where you see people and you're out on the campaign trail and it's just a constant, we know and we see every little thing. It's not the same, right? So this is what I think is going to happen. I don't know if I think they're going to let a little more time pass. Okay. I definitely think they're going to let this stew for at least a couple weeks. I really do. I think they're going to see how the polling does. Biden's been out at rallies looking way stronger, of course. Right. And see if the tide can turn, see if his circuits. I want to play. And this was, and I know you guys have probably seen it, but I'm going to play a little bit more of Newsom after the debate. And Newsom you could tell how pissed he is that there's even this conversation about replacing Biden. And I get it,
Mm-hmm. You were out there getting a chorus of questions about whether Biden should step down. There is panic that is set in. There is panic that is set in among people who have watched this debate, who are Democrats, people who are strategists, and some even inside Democratic campaigns. Yeah. Do you think it's unfounded?
Well, I think it's unhelpful. And I think it's unnecessary. We got to go in and got to keep our heads high. And as I say, we got to have the back of this president. You don't turn your back because of one performance. What kind of party does that?
Yeah, Kim.
It's been a masterclass. 15.6 million jobs. That's 8 times more than the last 3 Republican presidents combined. The only thing the last 3 Republican presidents have in common is recessions. Democrats deliver. This president has delivered. We need to deliver for him at this moment. With all due respect, the more time we start having these conversations, go down these rabbit holes, it's unhelpful to our democracy, our fate and future of this country, the world. They need us right now to step up, and that's exactly what I intend to do.
So
that's so nice to have him on your side. And that's great that Gavin's like, hey, rah, we're moving forward.
But he makes a good point, though.
But everyone else is like, uh-oh.
Yeah, but Kim, he makes a good point, though. Biden has had a successful presidency in as far as what he's been able to get accomplished, especially with this Congress. Mm-hmm. So all of that's erased because he had a very bad, and I will admit, a very bad debate performance, and he is old, and his age completely was on full display. Right. So we're just going to forget all of his platform, all of the work he has set in motion. We're just going to be like, nope, sorry, you're old.
No, I not me. I'm still voting for the guy.
Well, no, I mean the collective, like as Democrats. You know what I mean? Like, what are we doing?
There's a metric that's measured about confidence in the president, right? Do you have confidence in the president? Do you have confidence in America?
I have confidence in the Democratic Party. I have confidence in the platform. I have confidence in the policies. I have confidence in the fact that when that ballot is in front of me, there's no effing way that I'm putting Donald Trump as president. That's what I have confidence in.
What you have then, and I'm going to make this analogy, even though it's another weird one. It's kind of like Trump. People are voting, I think, not for Trump because they like Trump. I mean, he's a highly unlikable fellow, right? They're holding their nose and voting for him because they like his policies. They like that, well,
then I'm doing the same thing for Biden.
We didn't used to have to make that choice.
But I'm not plugging my nose for Biden. I'm not plugging my nose for Biden. I'm worried about Biden. You know what I mean?
But here's the thing. You need to, is the race about policy or is the race about the person? Because if it's in the Trump race, obviously it's about policy and not the person, because who likes that guy? Right. In the Biden race, now it becomes about policy, not the person. So now we're down to you're policy, always voting for policy. No, because in the race for president, usually in America's history, it's been about the person, right? You do one wrong move, you breathe the wrong way, all of a sudden you're stepping down from a campaign.
No, I disagree. Why did we vote for Biden? We voted for Biden over policy. We were protecting the climate. We were protecting reproductive freedom. We were protecting the races. That's policy, Kim.
But if we hated the guy, or if we didn't have confidence in the guy, or if we thought the guy at 5 o'clock every night was going sundowner and couldn't think right, when the something could happen overnight that could plunge us into world war, and there's no one thinking at the helm. I'm just saying, like, it now becomes strictly about policy, because you can like the guy, but you look at the individual and go, is this a president now? Is this a president?
I think that we're imagining that everyone is just standing around and Biden's a little slow and everyone's like, well, I guess we got to wait for him to get this sentence out before we know what the hell to do. Come on. We know that the country isn't run that way.
It's true.
It is run by appointments. It is run by, okay, this is the policy. This is the plan. I have smart people around me. That's the problem with Donald Trump. We are scared, not just of a Donald Trump presidency, but the people he is going to appoint. That's what scares the crap out of people. He's going to surround himself with. The reason I'm not scared of Biden and I'm not worried about another Biden presidency is I know he's going to have the right people in place. I mean, let's
It's
totally
take a deep
true. Collective breath here.
Before that debate, I had confidence in the man. Before that debate,
right? I don't think
you know what I mean.
Another 4 years
before that debate, I was like, no, he's fine. The guy's got stamina. He's totally okay. Let him go. Right? Then after that debate, I had questions. If I have questions, imagine all the rest of the people in the country who are like, oh, no. They're not hardcore Democrats.
Yeah.
So
I'm not as worried about him being an old man as I am about another Donald Trump presidency.
Oh,
so
totally.
if it's between the men, going back to the person or the policy, there's no question. I mean, if that's what we're basing it on, Biden's old. It might be a Kamala Harris in the middle of the term. It might be a Kamala Harris presidency. Okay. I am sleeping soundly with that knowledge. Absolutely. There is not even a hesitation. You know what? There's not a hesitation if they make the transition right now. If they go, and that's the only transition I think that we can do, really, honestly, because I think that's the only fair thing to do this far into the campaign. People voted for Joe Biden in the presidency knowing that Kamala Harris was VP. To choose a totally different candidate now, that's unfair to the American voter, in my opinion.
I would choose aging issues over what I consider with Trump mental health issues any day, right?
Oh God, yes. Especially because people are old. Old people vote too. Like, you know what I mean? Like, come on now. Like, it's not something that's inconceivable. There's old people that make important decisions every day of their lives. That debate was late at night. I'm not making excuses. It was kind of mean. Like, I don't know. And Biden stutters. It was late at night. He had a cold. Somebody gave him Dimetapp. I have no friggin' idea. But it was not a good debate. He looked terrible. I am not going to be able to spin that. But every day and twice on Sunday would I vote for Biden over Trump.
I completely agree with you. But Randy says old people with declining mental capabilities are not being elected president.
Yeah,
that's what Randy
Trump
says.
Is an old person Trump is an old person with declining mental capabilities that can yell and scream in a stronger voice. That is the truth. He lied up there. He speaks nonsense all of the time, except his voice doesn't waver. That's actually even more concerning because if and when he's a president, he will speak to our adversaries and lie and tell all sorts of nonsense in a strong voice. I don't like that either.
The problem with that debate is we knew the lies were coming from him, but there was no one strong enough to stop it. Yeah, so the lies just went on magnified and totally unchallenged and totally unchecked. You've got to have someone strong enough to stand there and go, and here's why. And we couldn't even understand what President Biden was saying. I don't know. You know what's more upsetting is that the question has been asked repeatedly. This is the best we've got. This is what America, this is what we're putting forward. And I feel like why are we in this position that these are the two guys we have to vote for? These are the two people that we've decided it comes down to. Right. And we shouldn't even be in this position. We should have ferreted this out long ago. Trump should have been ferreted out way back when.
I was a Pete Buttigieg person. I'm just letting you guys know early on. I was a Pete Buttigieg person. We would have not had this problem way back when in 2016 if we could have been a Pete Buttigieg person. I think Pete Buttigieg in the future should totally run for president again. I really do. I don't think the country is ready for a Pete Buttigieg president. Maybe they are in 2028 and maybe 32, whatever. But I'm just saying we wouldn't have been in this problem if the Democratic Party didn't, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I will tell you, I was quite surprised when candidates were dropping out right and left, and I was shocked that Joe Biden became the candidate. I was shocked. I was one of the early people. It's not going to be Biden. It's not going to be Biden. And then all of a sudden it became Biden. And now we're in this situation. And I do blame the Democratic Party. You didn't see this freaking coming? Really? You didn't see this situation coming. Well, now we're in it. And I'm not saying Biden hasn't been a good president. I think with this Congress, he has gotten a lot of political policies done that I fully 100% support. Yeah. But this age issue in a second term, everyone should have seen coming a mile away.
Right.
So you know what? This is the bed. Get comfy because we're in it now. I don't know what the hell we're supposed to do about it except go in, check the Biden box, and whatever happens, happens, because Democratic policies are the only thing that's going to save this friggin' nation. Donald Trump is the worst thing that has ever happened to us.
The problem is now I'm scared. Not of a Biden presidency.
I'm getting all hot and bothered. Sorry, guys.
I think it's... Someone said earlier, when you get angry, you get really, really cute.
I'm all hot and bothered.
Now you're disrobing. I don't even know what to say anymore. I feel like I'm scared. I'm scared because I thought we had a shot, and now you've got this, this wavering 13 to 15% of voters who can't quite figure out what you're going to do, as if the choice isn't incredibly clear, or, there's not two obvious choices, but there are these waverers, these independents in the middle, these people who don't know.
There's not that many of them.
Are they going to be motivated to vote? Are they going to be motivated to go vote for the guy that maybe looks old and infirmed? What's going to happen now? Because my worst fear is that Donald Trump gets back in the White House.
Of course it is. That's always been the fear. I can't imagine.
So, what do? We have to do something.
You
it feels
vote.
Like I feel helpless.
No. You know what you do? You do the same damn thing that we did in 2020. You write the notes to the states, right? Mm-hmm. You do all of those things. You do not become apathetic. That's what you do, because the same threats that were then are here now, even more magnified. Project 2025. I was seeing some of you in the comments. Absolutely. If you look it up, it's very wonky. I know a lot of you don't go on X anymore, but there was a great thread that I retweeted, if you want to find it, that had some of the nuts and bolts of it. It's freaking wackadoo, and you're like, that'll never happen. Under a Donald Trump presidency, you never know. But all I'm saying is never say never. Stay engaged. And the truth of the matter is, you are voting for policy. Yes, you may look at the guys and be like, these are the people that we're choosing. This is the face, but it is the policy. It is the direction. Where do you want to go? What do you believe in? Do you believe in climate change? Do you believe in reproductive freedom? Do you believe that people should have the same rights no matter who they love, what their sexual orientation or gender identity is? Yeah. I mean, do you believe in these things? Do you believe there should be a Department of Education because Project 2025 doesn't? I mean, these are the things that matter, not the face of the presidency. I know we make it into this big, gigantic thing, but it's the wonky political crap that actually matters. I don't know.
I see that's how we have to operate now, because as you say, this is the bed we're in and get comfy. And so this is the way it has to go. But fundamentally, I disagree. I want a real functioning president of the United States. Yeah, it's the same argument that I would tell people that were voting for Trump. I get that you're for the conservative policy, but how could you possibly vote for that guy? You're voting for that person. You're voting to bring ugliness to America. You're voting to bring somebody who's dictatorial. You're voting to bring someone in who, doesn't care about democracy and tried to smash it on the way out.
Yeah.
That's all the person. None of that is the the conservative policies. And they were willing to, and still are, go with that person because he's stacking the court with, conservative justices that will do away with Roe v. Wade, these type of things. Yeah. So if you can make that argument for President Biden, you can make that argument for Trump. And that's where we are, is that we're no longer voting for a person, for a strong president, for someone you believe in to lead the country. We might as well just look at the list of Democratic policies and go, all right, well, I guess it's the Democrat. Then doesn't matter who it is.
Yeah, I mean, there is some truth to that last statement, though, Kim. I mean, that's why they do put out and kind of get together and come up with a platform. I mean, that is what people are supposed to pay attention to, right?
Sure, the issues, yeah.
The issues. I mean, that is what we are voting on.
Don't you want the total package? Don't you want a president who believes what you believe and is strong and capable and brave and courageous and as an American as apple pie? Don't you want that?
I know, but that becomes like, I feel like, again, we get caught up in the image, and then because we are image focused, right? I mean, we get caught up in that. And I think that what we've also seen is then we're distracted by the image, and we forget that there's all these things happening in the background that we need to pay attention to as well. Right. It's kind of like when people go and they, like we've talked about before, like, I'm a conservative in California. Right. And all of a sudden you go to a red state where they're actually conservative and you're like, oh my God, I did not realize. You're like, yeah, because you weren't paying attention, because you're just looking at this American flag, guns and what have you. And you're like, no, there's actual things that you can't actually do out there and say, or people do say and what have you. I don't know. People like things put in a nice box with a cute picture on it. And that's just not the way government works. And we need to be engaged, and we need to know what the hell's happening. And we need to know what these parties actually stand for, and not just get caught up in sound bites and headlines, and actually read the fucking article.
Maud says this November will be astonishing. More people will vote than ever before. She said it's going to be a landslide. The only people that do are pro-tyranny, or that are pro-tyranny. There are more of us.
You know what? Vote for Trump, maybe.
Yeah. What's interesting, I don't know. I don't know if are there more of us? Are there more of us?
I think I think we need to cheer Kim up. I feel like I think the weekend didn't do well for you. I think Kim was reading too many negative headlines.
Well, you know what happened?
Cheer Kim up.
I published a short, and all the short said was how President Biden was defending himself. He said, and his statement about, I didn't do well in the debate, but when you get knocked down, you get back up, right?
I get knocked down,
but I get up again. And I actually sang that. Yeah. Okay. So I published that. And it's seen like 4,000 times or 5,000 times. And every single comment, there's like 50 comments. Right. And they're all like, you're stupid. Trump's going to win. You're Trump 2024. Like,
it's the internet, Kim.
I know that. But it really feels like sometimes there are more of them, that there are more of people who are just so, like, not even responding with a cogent argument, just responding with ugliness. So I don't know.
There are also probably bots too, and all of those.
Yeah.
That is not the real world. It is not. And again, sane, rational, active voters, people that believe in democracy, those sorts of people, I think we are going to come out and vote. I really do. Republicans, I love Chip Franklin always has the statistic, so I'm not going to give it out because I won't be accurate. But he always says, he's like, Democrats win the popular vote, right? With the one person, one vote, Dems win.
Yeah.
We just win because we represent diversity. We do. You know what I mean? Not land, but people is who we represent. Louise, thank you again for another $5 donation. You're awesome. Do the math. Project 25 plus 34 felonies equals Donald Trump can't be 47 president. I love that. You know, like the whole numbers thing, you know, the conspiracy. I think you're kind of talking their language, Louise. So I hope you're right. I hope. You know, that's all we can do. We can only do what we can do, Kim. You know what I mean? I like to stay positive. What you put out, you get back. So I do. I believe that we are going to be energized. I also believe we can only do so much. You know, we don't live in these swing states. We live in California. And so what we did last time, we need to do again. We need to reach out to these states. We need to reach out to apathetic voters, you know, those that don't believe that either of these men is worthy. We need to stop pushing, you know, the face of Biden or even the face of Trump and show the policy. Like, what do you want? You know what I mean? Like, these red states that are experiencing the effects of climate change as their homes slip into the rivers and these hurricanes, and they're experiencing things they've never seen before. Be like, do you think that your governor is doing the right thing for you? Do you think that a president is supporting these sorts of things? Look at your education, all of these sorts of things. Do you want this or that? And you have to make an argument that will make sense to them and not talk down to people, you know, because, and also not think that they're always going to agree with you either. I think it's hard for Californians to understand what it's like to live in Kentucky, right? Or to live in whatever other state. And you need to understand that if you do a letter writing campaign, just as they don't understand what it means to live in California and everything that comes with that. So, you know, we're all Americans. I do believe that a Biden policy is better than a Trump one, though.
Oh, agree with that. So do you think that we should stick with President Biden then, or do you think that he should step aside?
I personally think that we should just stick with Biden and come what may as far as his health. And if and when, because it's a when, I mean, everybody has their own when, right? We don't know when that's going to come, but he's not up to it anymore. Kamala steps in. That's it. That's it. People, that's what we voted for. That's what a vice president does. He or she steps in when the president can no longer do the job. And whether it's before or after the election, it is what it is.
I was talking to Alex Michelson, who is a news anchor in Los Angeles and hosts a political show called The Issue Is.
Okay.
And he said that if they're going to go with a different candidate, the way to do it is this, that he's not advocating this, but he said this is how it could happen. That right now, President Biden steps down and Kamala Harris becomes president. And so then she goes into this next election as an incumbent president. That would be the way to do it.
But then, okay, so she runs as president right now?
Right now, at this very moment, he would step down and she would become the president. And so then...
So who's vice president?
Whoever she decides to pick. And then she would go, and she can't be somebody from California, right? So GovGav is out.
Oh God,
but
no.
Then they go into the election, and they go into the Democratic National Convention, and she's the incumbent president, and it's a position of strength. So I don't know. Will that happen? Probably not. But
That's an interesting take.
Isn't it an interesting thought though? What if that happened? Yeah.
There's a lot of talk. There's a lot of, you know what? That's what keeps politics interesting. You know what I mean? It keeps us on our toes. So, you know, who knows, but keep it here and we'll try to figure it all out. All right, you guys, click that thumbs up button. Show your support for the show. We, again, really appreciate Royal Oaks coming on with us earlier to decipher the Supreme Court ruling. We will be back tomorrow. And thank you all for being here and for your donations. Let's give some thank yous while we can. Doug, thank you so much for the $5 super sticker. Louise came in with a couple donations.
Woo-hoo!
Thank you for the $5 and the presidential yard sale. You came in with another $5 donation and loving the live shows. Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome.
You know, we got to do these live shows with these SCOTUS rulings, my God. And your a $5 donation and the math that I hope is very correct. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You guys can always donate to our super chat. Also, if you want to financially support the show, which is the only way we can keep doing the show, go to theNikkiMadoroShow.com. Our Patreon link is there. It's a one-time a month donation, and we appreciate all the Medorables who donate one time a month. We also take PayPal, so if you like PayPal, go to paypal.com. Hit the send button, put in any amount you can, and then send it to the Nikki Maduro Show at gmail.com. And 4th of July is right around the corner. What better time to use Auntie Tabby's Island Flavors barbecue sauce? It comes in guava, and she has hot sauces, a hibiscus one and a pineapple one that are delicious. Use the coupon code NickKim and you get 10% off every single time you order. We've had amazing people. Jim and Dan have bought sauces. You can get the multi-pack. And it's such a great way to support the show, and we appreciate you guys. So remember the coupon code NickKim, NickKim, and you get 10% off every single time you order. All right, you guys, thank you so very much. We will see you tomorrow, and bye-bye.
Nikki, you're oh so awesome, Miss Brown, like a beautiful blossom. You're also the best. I really can't rest. You're all so awesome.
Wow. Okay.